Fantasy Football Advice Week 10. You're listening to Sean and David on the Fantasy Football Almanac Show. David, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing a lot better. Last week was a tough week for me coming off that Ravens close loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week we did what we needed to do, handle business. And like I said last week, I said we looked at that betting line. It was like 1.5, 2 points, 3 points for the Colts. I said I was going out and betting some money. I bet a hundo on the Ravens. And thank God.
Yeah, you were sweating it in the first half, weren't you?
Well, I'll tell you what, my DFS lineups were just atrocious.
Yeah, I bet.
Atrocious this week. They were awful.
Yeah.
So that one Ravens bet saved my week. My
Well,
homerism coming through in the clutch.
yeah. Well, I mean, it would have been wise to bet on the Ravens defense anyway in DFS. I think this week, although they were a better bets, I would have probably put all my money into the Pittsburgh defense, and that would have fallen flat anyway. So.
I did bet on the Ravens defense. Unfortunately, J.K. Dobbins was also a fixture in many of my lineups.
Yeah, those Colts. In fact,
and Mark Andrews.
Yeah, you know what? The first game of the week is Thursday Night Football, Indianapolis Colts versus Tennessee Titans. So since we were talking about that Colts-Ravens game, let me just say this, man. I'm a big believer in the Colts defense. I was with you. I didn't think the game would be a blowout, but I thought that the Colts-Ravens game was going to be a closer one, but a Ravens cover. The Ravens ended up kind of stretching it at the end, although, I mean, the Colts were driving late. If it weren't for that defensive touchdown, the Colts could have been driving to tie there. I mean, I thought that was a closer game on paper, or I'm sorry, in reality than it was on paper, at least in the terms of the final score, but yeah, the Colts, I respect them, but I thought that they were going to have trouble against the Ravens defense because the Ravens defense and Colts defense, I think, neutralize each other. And the Ravens offense, although again, like if you're looking analytically, I kind of like the Colts offense a little bit better in terms of being able to come from behind, as we've talked about on the show. But I thought the Ravens' style of just punch you in the mouth running, even though the Colts' defense is strong, I thought that the Ravens would be able to wear them down by the end of the game. Plus, Lamar Jackson's impossible to game plan for, his speed. So, and that's what ended up happening at the end of the game there. Anyway, let me get to the fantasy football projections here. So, Colts, I have Rivers as a start against the Titans. Look, the Titans' defense looked okay against the Chicago Bears, but every defense looks okay or great against the Chicago Bears. So, I still have concerns. Good win for Tennessee. Still have concerns about the defense. So, Phillip Rivers is a start. Jonathan Taylor, if he's okay, I mean, I know he was nicked. Is he gone, David? I didn't see anything on the injury report today, but what's going on there?
You know, I believe he got through the game healthy, and the result of his benching was because of a fumble early on. So after that, he scored the touchdown, he fumbled, and they really just kind of turned it over to
That's
Jordan
a mistake.
Wilkins. And absolutely, especially when you look at the efficiency numbers, he was averaging 4.5 yards per carry against a rugged Baltimore defense. Wilkins, not so much. So
yeah,
it was tough to see that.
You know, it's look, when you have if you're the Los Angeles Rams and you have Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers, the guy fumbles, you want to put somebody in fine. If you're the Patriots and you have Damian Harris and Rex Burkhead and James White, somebody fumbles, you want to put somebody else in fine. When you're the Colts and you have Jonathan Taylor, I mean, are you going to bench Phillip Rivers when he throws an interception? It's just dumb. It's just dumb.
That's another good question, though. Because I might say yes to that one.
But you know what I'm trying to say, right? Would you bench Lamar Jackson and go with RG3 if he throws a bad pick? I mean, fumbles.
I can get down with that one.
You know, fumbles happen. I mean, give me a break. If the talent is equal, but the talent's not equal here, man, that's dumb. It probably cost them the game because I was watching it, but I had the sound off because I was watching, I think, Seattle Buffalo. And I noticed Wilkins was in the game, but I knew Jonathan Taylor was a little bit nicked up. So I figured that Taylor had injured and I got injured and I missed it. Benching him is just dumb. Frank Reich, that's a bad move. But anyway, Taylor, assuming he's back in there, I start him. I like Pittman. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. Drawing targets, he was hyped in the offseason. People forgot about him because he's injured. He's back, everybody. Baltimore Ravens, not worried about it. His first game back, I'm not worried about it. I think he's going to pop. I like Zach Pascal, but not as much as I like Pittman. And actually, this week, I would say you start your starting tight end there, whether it's Burton or Doyle. Just watch the depth chart because there's a new one every week. It could be Ali Cox, for crying out loud. I actually think he's the best of all of them. Tennessee, on the other hand, Ryan Tannehill, I think, is a start this week. I think Derrick Henry, although he'll get volume and he's worth starting, the Colts defense is for real, so I would start him, but don't expect a huge week from him. Probably, a 3.5 yards per carry and a touchdown. That's what you're going to get, just like you did last week. A.J. Brown's a start. Corey Davis, I think, is a start. Adam Humphries, I think, is a start. And then Jonnu Smith, I actually don't love the projection this week, but I'd probably start him anyway, depending on who else I have. Take it away, David.
We'll start with Jonathan Taylor because, man, you got to hope this is the get right week. It almost looked like it was going to be this past game against Baltimore, which nobody was expecting. Everybody was – I had him benched. And then he scored that touchdown, and I started going, oh, geez, what the hell was I thinking? You got to play your studs. And then I got bailed out a little bit because they benched him over the fumble.
Yeah.
But if he can look good against the Ravens, I got to think he's going to look good against the Titans, who right now are the 8th friendliest fantasy matchup for running backs, behind only the Lions, Packers, Texans, Raiders, Panthers, Jaguars, and New England Patriots. Those are the only teams who have been friendlier to running backs. So hopefully it's a get-right game for Jonathan Taylor. I'm not panicking yet. Yeah. If I see them continue to involve Jordan Wilkins, am I going to be thrilled about that? Absolutely not. Michael Pittman, I do like him. I like him as a prospect. I don't really love his value this year. I don't really see a ton of upside just because they are run first. Phillip Rivers is targeting the crap out of his tight ends, which unfortunately is a different tight end every week. Hopefully we get a little clarity. Jack Doyle did get a concussion, so he could miss this next week. Hopefully that allows Mo Alley-Cox or Trey Burton, who I've been high on. I was high on Alley-Cox to start, and then I was all over Trey Burton, and now it's just like it's becoming the Patriots' backfield a little bit, where it's just a different one each week. So
Alley-Cox is the best of them. I mean, if you watch it, he's the best of them.
He looks the best, and he runs the hardest, and he's the biggest threat after the catch with the ball in his hands. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I think both him and Burton need to be rostered at this point in leagues because you're not going to find anything clear as a tight end on waiver, so you might as well just roster them both or one or the other and hope that something happens to kind of clarify the situation. Because these guys would each be tight end ones if they were just getting a full workload.
Right, absolutely. Clear tight end ones. Maybe even top 5, the way this offense works.
Yeah, if they could just pick one and stick to it.
Yeah.
On the other side, Titans, still kind of pretty clear. The only thing which I noticed this past week, which I was looking out for, was Corey Davis, or didn't notice, I should say, but dropped up the big old bagel, which was kind of, he was due for it when you look at the facts. He had double-digit points in every single game before that. But the games before that were easy matchups, and this was a tough matchup. So hopefully it continues that way, and you know when to play him, kind of like we were talking about with Odell Beckham earlier in the year. It was predictable. You play him in the soft matchups, you bench him in the tough matchups. I feel like we're kind of settling into that kind of mindset with Corey Davis. When the matchup is there, you play him. When it's not, you sit him. It's not that way with A.J. Brown, though. I'll tell you that. You're playing him no matter what. I don't care who he faces. So A.J. Brown, man.
He looks like a freaking tight end at wide receiver. Every time I see him, I'm like, man, he looks too big to produce at wide receiver, but he just always does.
I mean, maybe I'm tooting my own horn here, but guys, this is why you bet on freaks. I was betting on A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf this year all over the offseason. Why? Because they're freaks. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Just bet on freaks. It hasn't worked out so well with Jonathan Taylor for me, I'll tell you that, because he's a freak too. And I bet on him just because of that simple fact. But for the most part, you bet on freaks, it's not going to lead you wrong 9 times out of 10.
Let me give you a bold prediction here. So when I was doing a reaction video to the Baltimore-Indianapolis game, I compared the wide receivers. I mean, the scheme is similar. I was comparing the wide receivers to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I said Zach Pascal to me is like Greg Ward, the consistent guy. He'll get you 5 catches, he'll get you 60 yards every now and then, he'll get in the end zone, so you can play him. I think Michael Pittman could be the Travis Fulgham this year as we close out the season, because I like Paris Campbell more, for the record, but we're not going to get him this year. I think Pittman, and I'm saying this, the schedule towards playoffs, because I know you religiously look at that. I don't have the playoff schedule up, but let me just say last quarter of the year, I think Pittman could have a Travis Fulgham-like impact on the Colts and on fantasy community, because I really think he has that ability this year. And as he continues to play, remember, I mean, he's a rookie he's played about 4 games so far. He can get better and better. So I think the opportunity is there for him in this offense to really, take the reins here. Although again, next year, I still like Paris Campbell coming back next year. T.Y. I'm kind of giving up on, though.
Yeah. You want to look at the schedule real quick? I
Yeah.
got it here, and it is beneficial for Pittman going down the stretch. They have Tennessee this week, then Green Bay, then Tennessee again, then Houston, the Raiders, and Houston again before a matchup against Pittsburgh week 16. So obviously week 16 you don't love, but 13, 14, 15, that's good news. If you look at fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, Houston and the Raiders are, I believe, both. I can pull it up. I believe they're both. I know the Raiders are, if not the worst, they're one of the worst. They were last week. Raiders, let's see. I guess they're down a little bit more. They're more friendlier to quarterbacks, the Raiders, but they're about middle of the pack.
Okay.
The wide receivers. Texans, though, they are the 8th friendliest matchup for wide receivers, and they faced them twice in those last 4 weeks.
So all we need then, if you're kicking yourself for not getting Fulgham for free, I think Pittman could be that guy. Again, I agree with you, David. I don't think this is the week that he's going to really burst out, and I still think it's going to take like 2 or 3 games. But if you're looking for somebody to plug in, and everybody's freaking getting injured. By the way, this makes this week, David. Let me complain a little bit. The 9th week in a row. Yes, we're in week 9 this past week. 9th week in a row where I had a starting player on my fantasy team leave in the first quarter. Oof. Justin Jackson. 9th week in a row. I'm loaded. I'm absolutely loaded. I lost by 6 points this week. I'm going to be 5-4. I might miss the playoffs because every freaking week I have 1 or 2 players leave in the first quarter. It's happened with Deontay Johnson twice. It's happened with Raheem Mostert twice. It's happened with Justin Jackson. Happened with Austin Eckler. Every freaking week. But anyway, that's enough of me complaining. Let me hit you with the line here. Indianapolis plus 2.5 points on the road Thursday Night Football against the Tennessee Titans. Who you got, David?
I got the Titans here. I don't think 2.5 points is enough to be picking the Colts.
You know, I think that this one's going to be a close game. I could see close Colts win. I could see close Titans win. I think I'm going to take the points in this matchup. I generally, as a rule, I don't bet Thursday night games because you just never know what you're going to get. Banged up guys, sometimes teams fall flat. So I'm going to personally stay away from it. Colts rebounding off a loss. It would not shock me if they upset the Titans, but I like both of these teams. I really do. I like the way they're constructed. I like Tennessee more than Indianapolis, but that might just be my offensive bias because the Colts defense is for real. Next game on the list, man, we got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me tell you, David, I had the Pittsburgh Steelers in my elimination pool. I felt really good until the first quarter when the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't get anything done. I was kind of panicking a little bit when Roethlisberger went down deep in the first half. It was the second quarter, wasn't the last drive, second to last drive. I thought he tore an MCL. That's what it looked like to me. So I was like, oh gosh, is he going to be out for 3 weeks? Tried it in the locker room, came out. Dude is. As I was texting my friend, I said if it was Jay Cutler, he'd be on a flight to Malibu by now. But Ben Roethlisberger finishes the game, so kudos to him. Cincinnati coming off a bye week. I don't love that for Pittsburgh. I do like that Pittsburgh's playing at home. They always play well there. Cincinnati, as we saw them kind of handle Tennessee the previous week, they can score. They're not reliant on the run, which if you're reliant on the run, that hurts you more if you play Pittsburgh, in my opinion. Now, Burrow's going to throw interceptions. Pittsburgh might score, but I'm not just ignoring the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me get you with the fantasy football projections here. Joe Burrow, probably more of a sit, super flex play, but not elsewhere, not there. Even though I think Cincinnati will score points, you can do better. If Mixon's back, I don't even know what his injury status is, David. You probably know more than me. Is Mixon going to play?
I believe he's going to be back. I believe he's going to be back this week.
I hate that. I have a good projection on him, but I hate it against the Steelers. But I guess I play him. Boyd, definitely play. T. Higgins, I definitely play. I probably stay away from every other receiver on the Cincinnati Bengals. Roethlisberger, I play. James Conner, I think, will bounce back this week. I'll play him. The 2 receivers, I guess I'm playing Smith-Schuster and Claypool. Claypool led this team in targets. I think this is his first week where he led the team in targets for the Steelers. He's going to continue to emerge. I like Deontay Johnson, so I'd probably play him as well. Eric Ebron, I actually have one of my better projections on him this season, so he could get in the end zone as well. Take it away, David.
Well, I'll just start with the disappointment. Where was James Conner?
Yeah.
I mean, this was the week. This was the smash week for James Conner, and we got 9 carries for 22 yards.
Ouch.
That's concerning.
Yeah.
You got to look at the bigger picture, though. I think he's absolutely, definitely a start against Cincinnati again. All of those wide receivers, as you mentioned, Juju, Claypool, Johnson, you start all of them every week at this point. Even Ebron's becoming like I don't want to say must start, but unless you got better options, you ride him while he's hot.
Sure.
So I love Claypool. He had 8 for 69. He's still, if I'm starting a guy, he's the number one for me this year. Barely 1A out of the 1B, 1Cs. He had 8 for 69, and he had a close play where it looked like he dropped it, and it was going to be a long touchdown. So he left another one on the board. It was a tough week for that Pittsburgh offense. They just couldn't really get it going. The Pittsburgh defense, though, they're still the Pittsburgh defense, but the past 2 weeks, the Ravens ran, I believe, 200 yards against them. And then we see Garrett Gilbert came out, 21-38, 243, a touchdown.
He looked pretty good.
He didn't look horrible. He didn't get dominated.
Right.
So I don't see how you could be concerned about Joe Burrow or T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. I mean, those guys are all must starts pretty much no matter what the matchup is. So I wouldn't overthink it. I wouldn't sit any of those guys going against the Steelers, especially what we've seen the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Boyd's projection. I actually have him projected very highly. He might be my daily fantasy kind of sleeper of the week because he's getting big budget points, but he's not going to be a big budget player, especially in this matchup.
The thing with the Steelers is too, they've been a great defense in real life, but they've also been winning in every game that they've allowed wide receiver points. They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12th in wide receiver fantasy points allowed. So they're not exactly dominating wide receivers right now.
Yep.
Oh wait, that was in total points. That's not even counting the teams who've played 9 games. They're even friendlier if you do it on a points per game basis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ninth. They got the ninth most
bottom
points
third
per game.
Yeah. Or top third, however you look at it.
So I absolutely start T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd this week.
All right,
Drop AJ Green, though, if you haven't yet. What are you doing with AJ Green?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. Let me hit you with the line here. We got Cincinnati +9 versus Pittsburgh. Who you got?
+9?
+9.
I like teams coming off the bye. I'm going to take Cincinnati to score enough to cover that.
I think Pittsburgh was flat yesterday. I mean, let's be honest. It was embarrassing. They're going to come out with more character. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals, that's better. They're underrated. I mean, they score points, and they're going to be able to score points. And remember, even if Pittsburgh's winning this game by 14 the entire game, I mean, Cincinnati come down and get a late touchdown, cover the spread. So I'm actually going to take Cincinnati to cover the spread. I say Steelers by 6. I don't think we'll get another game like the Dallas game. I think Cincinnati or like Pittsburgh, I don't think their fans are going to be stressing like with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But at the same time, I see Cincinnati maybe getting a late cover here. So I'll take them. Next game on the list, we got the Houston Texans versus the Cleveland Browns. Houston Texans made it interesting against Luton or whatever his name was at quarterback. We were making fun of Giraffe Boy. We didn't get to see the giraffe.
Yeah,
the NFL's
Thank goodness.
most giraffe-like guy.
Not bad.
Yeah. But Cleveland coming off a bye week. It's interesting because we had that wind game, the Las Vegas Raiders game. So looking at this as a fantasy football player, daily fantasy football, I wanted to see what the offense was going to look like without Odell Beckham. Who was going to be getting a lot of these double moves. Of course, you have to figure it's going to be more Landry, but, a lot of Browns fans were commenting on the video, say it was going to be Higgins. They tend to know more about their team than we do, David, so I respect that. But because of the wind there, we didn't really get to see that in action. So I really want to get more information on this game because I don't know what's going to happen. But Cleveland off the bye week, are they going to be able to run against the Texans? I believe they will. But we'll see, man. Let me get you with fantasy football projections. I don't know. Is Chubb going to be activated for this one?
I believe he's going to be active as well.
Yeah,
we're getting the return of some backs this week.
About freaking time.
More depth.
About time. Eckler, where are you? I need you. I need you so bad, Eckler. Anyway, let's see. Houston. Deshaun Watson's a start. David Johnson. He's in concussion protocol. Is he a start? Is he not? If he's not, Duke Johnson might be the start of the week, just based on him getting consolidation of shares. Played very well after David Johnson went out. I almost started him. I almost had 2 players go out in the first quarter, David. Almost started David Johnson. Thank goodness I didn't, but it didn't matter anyway. Let's see here. Wide receiver Fuller, I think, is a great play this week. I like Brandon Cooks, man. He's getting in the end zone a lot. And I also like Randall Cobb this week. I have a nice projection on him. I'm staying away from tight end there. I don't like when both Fells and Akins are active. There's too much of a distribution there, and the touchdown could go either way. I do think one of them will get the touchdown, but I don't want to predict that just because I think it's really tough. Now, Cleveland, Baker Mayfield's a sit for me. You do start both running backs, assuming Chubb is active. If he's not, then start Hunt, and you can ignore Dearness Johnson, who for some reason blew up against the Cowboys, and then they just never used him again after that, which I found odd. Wide receivers, I like Jarvis Landry. If you believe that Higgins is the guy to get the double moves and that deep stuff that Odell Beckham was getting, you could play him, but I would say just don't risk it this week. Maybe daily fantasy if you need a cheaper guy. Tight ends, if Hooper is activated, I tend to think he will be, but we'll see. I start him. If not, Harrison Bryant I do think is a start. Take it away, David.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on that last point. You got to start whoever, if it's whether Hooper or Hooper's out, you got to start Harrison Bryant. Texans have been bottom 12 in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends. I don't have a ton to say about these teams. I just want to say a lesson to be learned, because Brandon Cooks, since Bill O'Brien has gotten fired, has been on fire.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Unfortunately, the one league I had Brandon Cooks, I dropped him after week 4 because I said, I'm done. He hasn't done anything. They're not involving him. They're using him on these deep routes that he's not good at. And I didn't take into consideration the fact that Bill O'Brien very likely could be fired.
Yeah.
So, because look at these last 4 games since O'Brien's been fired. 8 for 161 and a touchdown on 12 targets. 9 for 68 in a touchdown on 9 targets. 7 for 60 on 9 targets. And then 3 for 83 and a touchdown on 9 targets. He's had 9 targets in 4 straight games since O'Brien's been fired. So, lesson to be learned. If there's a coaching situation that could be fluid, that is not set in stone, don't just give up on good players who are pretty much one of the top 2 players in their offense.
Yeah.
Just because the coaching staff sucks so bad and can't get them the ball, because when the new coaching staff takes over, it might not be the same situation. And then all year you got to wonder why in the hell you dropped Brandon Cooks.
Yep, absolutely. Any thoughts on? Actually, you did. You went through Cleveland and Houston. Let me hit you with the line here then. Houston +3 versus Cleveland coming off the bye game at Cleveland. Who you got?
I definitely don't want to pick this game.
Yeah.
Because the Texans, we don't know what we get out of them on a weekly basis. They're hit or miss. The Browns, same thing. So I guess I'm going to take the team coming off a bye here. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of same logic, but for me, I'm taking the team with the points, so I'll take Houston. I mean, to me, this is a toss-up, and the toss-up for me is, well, first of all, whenever the Browns have Chubb in the lineup, I still think Chubb is the guy that makes this offense really go. So assuming they get him back, I like them a lot more, and I still have questions at wide receiver. So I really do take a pause here and really just watch it. So both David and me sound like we're out in terms of money. And Cleveland, you're taking the team off the bye. I'm taking the team with the points. So, I mean, that just shows you it's a coin flip from us. It'll be an interesting one, though. I probably have this one on the TV just because I want to see what happens. And I haven't watched Houston live in a while, so I'm curious to see kind of what they look like.
And Duke Johnson, the revenge narrative.
Oh, yeah.
If he gets the full workload, maybe Duke's in for a big game.
Hey, if he gets the full workload, he's gonna be a slam dunk daily fantasy pick this week. Absolutely buy him up. Next game on the list, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Green Bay Packers. Jacksonville Jaguars, it looks like Gardner Minshew, I think, will be out again. At least that's his declaration right now. I don't know if that'll change in the week. Those outs tend to turn to doubtfuls and questionables, based between Monday and Wednesday, Thursday when we record these things. So we'll see. But, Green Bay coming out against San Francisco, Aaron Jones, who's active, that was great, but all the touchdowns are going to Devontae Adams. I don't understand. Like, Tampa Bay was the only team that can figure out how to cover Devontae Adams. Like, you just get 2 people up on him and crash the routes because they just throw outs and slants all day. But he's impossible to cover, I got to say. And then he's got one of the best quarterbacks of all time throwing him the ball. So kudos to them. Let me get to the fantasy projections here. Quarterback I sit for Jacksonville regardless of who plays. I like James Robinson this week. We've talked about last week about how the Green Bay Packers defense is struggling against the run. Let's see here. I know DJ Tark had a good game, but I'm staying away from receivers for Jacksonville this week. I think it's really going to be James Robinson's game offensively for Jacksonville. Green Bay, on the other hand, I think Aaron Rodgers is a great play. I think Aaron Jones is a great play. Devontae Adams is a great play every week. And then I think Tanyan gets back in the end zone this week. That's my fearless projection based on the analytics here. I think Tanyan gets a touchdown. Take it away, David.
I'm kind of sick of waiting around on Tanya.
Yeah, I know.
He was good earlier, and I was all in. I was buying up the hype, especially because the San Fran connections where Matt LaFleur wants to run it like San Fran. Tanyan was the Kittle. He had the Kittle role.
Yeah.
It's just not really come to fruition. And maybe it's got something to do with that ankle injury he suffered a few weeks ago. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But at this point, I don't see how you can start him until we see something more from him. Maybe
right.
In daily fantasy, you take a shot. On the other side of the ball, Jake Luton. I'm automatically a Jake Luton fan just because he hasn't sabotaged this entire offense's value,
Yeah.
which was the main concern, especially I'd never even heard of this guy before. And you talk about Minshew if he's healthy. Do we know that he was actually even really hurt, and that's why he lost the job? It seems like one of those where they're like, "Hey, Minshew, we could tell the media that you hurt, or we could tell them that we're benching you for Jake Luton.
Yeah.
Which one you want us to go with? Maybe the hurt wrist." So even if he is healthy, I don't think there's any chance they turn back to him at this point until Luton face plants. They got to see what they have.
Yeah.
They kind of, for the most part, know what they have in Minshew. They don't want to move forward with him. That's been made clear. So I think Luton is going to be. He's going to get the rest of the season unless he starts throwing, crazy amount of interceptions left and right.
To me, Gardner Minshew, before we get to the line, Gardner Minshew is going to be the next Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's going to hang around the league for a long time. Occasionally he'll start, occasionally he won't, and he'll blossom into an 8-8, 9-7 quarterback and then constantly be replaced by rookie quarterbacks. And that's probably what's going to be happening this year, honestly. So, but I like him. I do like him, and I know Jacksonville Jaguars fans like him. I mean, he's a likable guy. He's fun to root for, but you're right. I mean, they're kind of, turning the page. And Luton played better, man. Luton played pretty well yesterday, almost closed that gap. And, we were talking about, like, Houston was going to run away and cover that spread, and that didn't end up happening.
Let's say, though, it was like a cake matchup. And we've seen this before. Minshew did the same thing in his first game against the Chiefs, and he came in, he played well, and we were all like, "Oh, Minshew!" Now look at we're here now talking about Jake Luton a year later.
Let me get to the line here. We got Jacksonville Jaguars plus 14 versus the Green Bay Packers. Who you got?
14. I guess I'm picking the Jaguars and Jake Luton to cover the spread.
Man. Yeah.
It's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points, man. I hate this one, so I'm staying away because of it. I would have taken Green Bay if it was 10. I mean, I'm still going to take Green Bay. If we have to make a pick here, I'll still take Green Bay, but there's no way I would ever wager my money on that. 2 touchdowns is way too much against the spread.
For a team that played all right last week. It's not
their offense... It's kind of like the Bengals, man. Their offense scores enough points, and if you're talking about covering spread, if the offense can put up points... they're a danger every week, and they're always a danger for a late cover. Like we said with the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cincinnati Bengals, the Green Bay Packers could be up 20 points the entire game, and then Jacksonville comes down, gets a touchdown with a minute left in the game, and completely screwed the cover. I mean, that's how this thing goes. So I'm going to stay away from it. Green Bay can dominate and still not cover this game. I'm just going to stay away from it. Next game on the list, we got the Philadelphia Eagles versus New York Giants. Actually a pretty big game. When you're talking about playoff implications now, as pathetic as that is, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're only 2 games, I think 1 game up or 1.5 on Washington, but the Giants now, did they get their second win or their third win against Washington? I lost track of that crappy NFC East, but they...
Probably second, I'm going to guess.
I think it's the second, but I got to be honest with you, they had a close game against the Eagles the last time they played. Probably should have won that game. I'm not convinced that the Giants aren't the better team in this division, but Philadelphia, we know about the injuries. We know about the potential. It's halfway through the season. I'm sick of potential. But let me hit you with fantasy stuff, and then we'll get to the spread. Carson Wentz this week, I do think he's startable, more so in Superflex than in your regular league. I mean, you can do better in your regular league, and your redraft league or whatever it is. Miles Sanders, if he's available, I think he will be. You can play him. I'm not sure about that, though. David, you might know more. I lost track of Miles Sanders over the bye week. Is he going to be back in?
I don't know about Miles Sanders. I haven't heard anything on him.
Yeah, I lost track of him. I apologize for that. But either way, if he's out, then I think you can start Boston Scott this week. He got the receiving touchdown the last time they played the Giants. Fulgham at this point, you start him every week. Dallas Goedert is back and healthier this week. I think even though my projections suck on him, I have him as an absolute play against the Giants. Giants defense is legit, guys, but their offense is going to struggle. I'm going to stay away from everybody on the Giants this week. That includes, Slayton and everybody else, basically. Even, you know what? I take that back. Ingram has a nice projection. I could go ahead and start Ingram, but I'm staying away from everybody else. Take it away, David.
Yeah, just for clarification, it was the Giants' second win. And if you want to know how bad this division is right now, Eagles are leading at 3-4-1. Mm-hmm. Not a single team is within 20 points of their points for to points allowed. The Eagles are the best. They have 186 points for to 205 allowed.
Jeez.
Washington 153 to 188 allowed. The Cowboys 204 to 290 allowed. And then the Giants 168 points to 219.
You wonder why the NFC West is so damn good, man. It's because they get to play the NFC East 4 times each. It's awful.
If you combined those teams, I don't know if you wouldn't even have 10 wins right now.
No, you wouldn't.
Bad. If you combine the entire division, you'd have 9 wins.
Yeah, they were talking. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have 8.
Season.
It's bad. It's bad, man. I grew up a fan of Washington. This is pathetic compared to how it was when I was growing up. But and by the way, if Kyle Allen didn't dislocate his ankle, and I think I might have said this last week, I'm not so convinced that Washington wasn't the best team in the division. Now that Kyle Allen's out, I mean, honestly, the New York Giants could be the best team in this division based on the defense, because the defense, they're playing really good football. I still would say Philadelphia is the best team here, but it's not a slam dunk. When everybody's under 500, it's not a slam dunk.
One guy who sticks out to me a little bit, and there's not a whole lot to cover. I love Dallas Goedert. Anybody who's watched the show knows me and you have both been all over Dallas Goedert. He's a must start for us at this point. He had the bye week to get fully healthy after playing against Dallas. You just start him and hope for the best, unless you have Darren Waller or even I don't even know if you start Mark Andrews over Goddard.
Honestly, so I have Kelsey, who's out. Well, Kelsey's out, so I'm going to be starting Goddard. Kelsey's out with the bye week, but
Kelsey or Waller, maybe Hawkinson.
Yeah.
Besides that, you start Dallas Goedert and just hope for the best, because he's got more tangible upside than anybody else you can plug into your lineup. And the floor is nothing for basically every tight end.
Yep.
But for the Giants, Wayne Gallman's been really standing out with these past 3 weeks with Devontae Freeman injured. He's got 3 straight games with a touchdown, 3 straight games with double-digit fantasy points. I'm not so sure when Devontae Freeman comes back, he's going to have a role. He might just be a mentor coach at this point, because Wayne Gallman, it seems like, has taken control of that backfield. He's running hard. He's averaging 4.4 yards per carry. He's one of the waiver wire guys we'll talk about later. I mean, I like what I'm seeing from Wayne Gallman. He's involved as a receiver, 7 receptions over the past 3 games. He's absolutely worth a desperation start at this point.
Yep. Let me hit you with the line here, man. We got Philadelphia minus 3.5 on the road versus the Giants. Who do you have?
Giants, I don't think, are good enough to cover that against a team coming off the bye. I'm going to take Philadelphia here. Philly's getting healthy a little bit.
I agree. I don't love laying the extra half point above a field goal here, but I do believe that Philadelphia is the best team. As I said, I'm not sure that's the case, and the Giants could make a statement here. Man, imagine if the Giants take care of business at home. You got Philly at 3-5-1. You would have the Giants at what, 3-5,
3-7,
3-7. They haven't had their bye yet, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they could pull within a half game, or I don't know, the damn Philly tie. It's too early in the week for me to do math. I got other
half
stuff.
Game. I believe that's a half a game.
Yeah, but plus the loss, though, they would have an extra one in the loss column. So I guess technically that would be, was it 3 quarters? No, I think it would technically be 1 game, but still, whatever. Next game on the list here, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Got absolutely shredded and embarrassed on Sunday Night Football versus the Carolina Panthers. Actually, them getting embarrassed bodes well, I think, for the Buccaneers. After Tom Brady's embarrassing, 4th down, 5th down snafu, I think he's going to be back. We saw in the last series that Christian McCaffrey got injured. As of the time of this recording, we don't really have news on that yet.
It's looking like he's going to miss at least a week, though, is what I heard. It's
God.
Probably not a season ender, but he's going to probably miss another game or 2.
Which makes Mike Davis, everybody's waiver wire darling for the 2nd time this season, because a lot of people dropped him. I wouldn't have personally dropped him.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Oh, I took the risk. Guess who I started over him? Guess who made me feel comfortable dropping Mike Davis?
I couldn't even tell you. Chase Edmonds.
Michael Hasty.
Oh. I did the same thing. I got nailed on Hasty. Broke my heart.
That one hurts.
I hate Thursday night games, man. It's just nothing but depression. Anyway, let's see. So Tampa Bay, I think Brady, after that performance, I think he has a big bounce back against Carolina. We know about the run game. In Carolina, they've been giving up yardage and everything. I guess you could start Ronald Jones. I guess I'd prefer Leonard Fournette still. I'm sorry, I just do. I don't know if Godwin's going to be back or not. Too early in the week, I think, to know for sure. But assuming he's back, I'd start him. But if he's not, I don't know what you do here. But maybe Gronkowski. Maybe Antonio Brown has a better game, something like that. Carolina, you start Davis. The one thing I loved about having Christian McCaffrey back is you and I kind of like Teddy Bridgewater a little bit, especially because he's available on waivers for everybody. Christian McCaffrey gets those receiving touchdowns, man. Those count for quarterbacks. So I loved it, but now he's going to miss a freaking week. So that makes, I think, Robbie Anderson a little bit better to me. DJ Moore will be a little bit more involved, and then I stay away from everybody else. Anyway, take it away, David.
Well, you got to hope with DJ Moore, man. I mean, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah.
2 for 18. I was looking into some stats because, of course, through the first 6-7 games, it's, how is DJ Moore comparing to Robbie Anderson? We have to go to the next level now, because now we got to look at how is he producing compared to Curtis Samuel.
Curtis Samuel, yeah.
And Curtis Samuel has had a better game, I believe, all 3 of the past 3 weeks. On the season, DJ Moore, 117 PPR fantasy points. Curtis Samuel, 107.8, and he didn't even play week 6 against the Bears. He missed a game.
You know what was interesting? Curtis Samuel, I believe, was picked the same draft as Christian McCaffrey. And when both of those guys were picked, I remember, the Kuipers and the McShays and all these guys, Mayock back then, all these guys were like, oh, these are great. They give, Cam Newton weapons, and Curtis Samuel can be a Swiss Army knife, and yada, yada. They can both come out of the backfield. But it's like Scott Turner, I think Norv Turner back then, and then Scott Turner right after that. They never really used him as that Swiss Army knife. And I know there's been some injuries and in and out and quarterback and all that stuff had been changing. But it's like now they have a more creative offensive staff, and we're starting to see him be a Swiss Army knife, and he's pretty damn dynamic.
And they did it in bits and pieces with Norv Turner
and
Scott Turner, but it was never they are committed to it now.
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel has a carry in every single game he's played this year. He's got at least 3, and I believe all but 2. So they're utilizing him as a runner on end arounds, on these quick screens, whatever it may be. Yeah. And right now he's producing every bit as much, I believe, points per game, more than DJ Moore, points per game. So even if you don't want to take Curtis Samuel seriously and you think he's going to fall off and the inconsistency is going to return, at the very least, he's got to be looked at as a major detriment to DJ Moore's upside and his floor.
Yeah.
I mean, DJ Moore, if you can move him and your 4th running back, just move DJ Moore on name value and try and get a legit wide receiver too, you got to go do that, because he's nothing but a name right now.
Tight end upgrade, as we've been talking about in recent weeks. DJ Moore for a tight end upgrade and pick somebody up off of waivers. Another thing about wide receiver, just strategically thinking, is when I track, the top 10 performers week to week, there's always 8 receivers that show up that are available on waivers. You don't get that with tight end at all. And you get a little bit of that with running back. You've actually converted me, David, because I've always had the opinion that you can pick up a tight end in the draft if you know where to look. But if you miss on that, you're not getting another tight end. You can find running back, quarterback, wide receiver, defense. You cannot find a tight end if you miss in the draft. And the competitive advantage from let's say middle of the road, Higbee was going number 5 in tight ends this year, which was ridiculous. We talked about that. The difference between a Higbee and a Kelsey or a Waller or, these guys at the top, I mean, you're getting 8 points a week on these top 5 tight ends versus the top 2 tight ends. It's wild.
And while you're going to talk about it, I got to take the mic because this is my brand.
That is.
It's the top tight ends. You got to get them. And next year, don't think, I'm grabbing Travis Kelce early round 2. I'm getting Travis. No, my friends. Late round 1.
Yep.
At the turn. Get him in round 1.
I agree.
Get him in round 1. There's no difference between those running backs at the turn. Late round 1, early round 2. Get Travis Kelce with your first pick.
Look, this year, and before the injuries and everything, this year, which I thought was interesting, and I'm always a running back guy in the first 3 rounds. I'll find my wide receiver and all that stuff, and I would argue that I couldn't find a tight end. But this year, I've changed my mind. And I found Waller, in the last round. I did that if you look in the history. But this year, I think my guy was Hayden Hurst, who we talked about. And he's starting to pop now, but that's because Quinn got canned, and they're going back to a little bit more pass-heavy stuff. So Hurst will probably end up fine, but everybody gave up on him, myself included. You can get Dallas Goedert and everything, but
And we were definitely sorry to cut him, but we were definitely a little bit skewed by the past 2 years getting Mark Andrews, getting a Darren Waller in the late rounds. That's not going to happen every year.
No,
people just expected. Oh yeah, every year I can find a late round tight end every year. No, you cannot.
Yeah, and not only that, but we recall quarterbacks is the same thing. It's like you could get Lamar Jackson late. You could get Patrick Mahomes late in like the last 2 years. This year, the fantasy community they rebounded, and everybody was on Kyler Murray like early. And he was my guy, like even before I was looking at boards. But tight end, you don't get that. And the point I was making about this year is I was looking, and I had that late pick. I actually traded down so that I could get the swing because I was hoping to get Josh Jacobs or Aaron Jones. I ended up with Aaron Jones on the swing. And then I got Austin Eckler in the third round. Now, before injuries, those guys, because I had Zeke, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler, those guys were 3 of the top 5 running backs before the injuries started happening and before Dak Prescott went down. So bottom line, what that confirms for me is your opinion. If I had gotten Kelsey with one of those, I could have still gotten 3 damn good running backs in the top 4 rounds. Like really good running. I could have gotten Kenyon Drake possibly in my draft, oddly enough, because I was in a dynasty, but so people were doing some goofy things. But anyway.
Let me just, we might as well beat this horse dead while we're on it. My ideal draft strategy, and I think it was confirmed by this, I've had a pretty good redraft year. It's got to be getting one of those top tight ends. I'd say first round, Travis Kelce. If not him, you get Kittle in the second next year. You get your running back. So the first 2 picks are tight end and a running back.
Yeah.
And then 3, 4, 5, you get those wide receivers because there's always the next big thing available. Everybody's taking those wideouts in round 2, the Tyreek Hills, the Julios, the DeAndre Hopkins. You can always find the next DK Metcalf.
You could have gotten
Jake
Metcalf
Brown,
later this
Terry
year.
McLaurin, all these guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th. That's when you want to load up on those wide receivers. The guys who are coming up into that upper tier but are young enough, especially we're seeing, like next year, you're going to be able to get T. Higgins in the 3rd, 4th round in a redraft league.
People will have forgotten about Cortland Sutton by then because of the second year of the injury.
You will be able to load up on those guys, and then once you get those 3 wides, you bang away at a RB2 stable. You do not need your RB2 in round 2. You want a stable because when you take your RB2 in round 2, or your RB3 in round 3, you are locked into that guy as your flex all year. Yep. You are locked into that guy in your RB2 spot, even in bad matchups. If you go the other way, get an RB and a tight end, first 2 picks, couple wideouts, and then you load up on RB2s in rounds 5, 6, 7, what's basically the last available. I was getting the Mosterts, DeAndre Swift, world, J.K. Dobbins. Then you rotate those guys based on matchup. You want a deep running back stable anyways. You're better off that way with the top tight end production locked in. And rotating your RB2 on a matchup basis.
Plus, I mean, this year you could have gotten Antonio Gibson late. You got Mostert late, and Mostert's been hurt 2 separate times. But his points per game average, if you take out him leaving in the first freaking quarter of 2 games, his points per game average was top 7. And I know because I had him, and he was actually top 7 with one of those early, games leaving early and all that stuff. So bottom line, the landscape has shifted in terms of strategy, and you can get running backs a lot later than you thought. But anyway, let me push it to the line here. So Tampa Bay -7 versus Carolina. Who you got?
I'm gonna take Carolina, even though Tampa Bay is gonna come out pissed off. Mm-hmm. But they just don't look there offensively right now. They look out of sync. So I'm going to take Carolina.
I don't like it. I think this line was too high for me. I was hoping that the ugly loss would have made this line like a 4. You'd Tampa Bay -4 or something. I really don't like it, but I'll take Tampa Bay to win by 10 here and get back on it. But Carolina, man, I got to say I'm really impressed with what Carolina's doing and the coaching staff there. I think they're building towards something really good. And when these old quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Drew Brees, when they retire, like Carolina's ready to make a run in this division for years. I think they got the right kind of coaching staff regime, the vision in place. I like what they're doing there. Next game on the list, we got the Washington football team with Alex Smith now as the quarterback versus the Detroit Lions. Interesting game. I'm going to stay away from Alex Smith here. Look, he's just not. He's an efficient quarterback. He's not going to put up a lot of points, I don't think. Antonio Gibson, I think will have some value. McLaurin, I still like him a lot more now than I did with Dwayne Haskins at quarterback. You overrode my decision last week to bench him. You said start him, so credit to you. You were definitely right on that last week.
Who was that you started?
McLaurin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I like Logan Thomas with Alex Smith at quarterback. Don't have a great projection, but I think he'll have a nice game as kind of like a safety valve there. For Detroit, Matt Stafford, assuming he doesn't spend the week in isolation again, I think you start him against Washington. I like Swift. I like... Actually, I don't really love anybody else. Do you know what Galladay's status is with the hip? I tend to think he's going to be out again, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. When he initially got hurt, I heard a few weeks he was probably.
Yeah,
so I would expect he miss at least one more game.
Yeah, so to me, that means Galladay. I don't like I would have expected Marvin Jones to get more targets with him out. I think we can confirm that he's not going to get there. The targets tend to be going to Amendola and Hawkinson, so I'd say start Hawkinson. But anyway, take it away, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amendola is the clear one who's a value guy, especially in like DFS. I think he was 3,700. I had him in one lineup, but unfortunately, like I said before, I tanked that lineup with Dobbins and Mark Andrews. But, you know, Marvin Jones, if he can't get it done, 3 for 43 and a touchdown with Galladay out against Minnesota, who's been cake. I got no issue with you dropping Marvin Jones. He's basically he's one step away from the AJ Greens, T.Y. Hiltons of the world. He's less than a step. He's like a half a step away.
I agree.
There's just not really upside in keeping him, and there's just so much to lose putting him in your lineup and getting those duds. No problem dropping Marvin Jones for like
even if he gets a touchdown, it's 3 catches, 25 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, it's like you can give me a receiver, get some yards and some more receptions then. Jeez.
Yeah. Marvin Jones is pretty much done, so I'd rather stash a high upside backup. Like I said, Tony Pollard maybe if he's still available.
Yeah.
Even other guys, Benny Snell, I'd rather roster than Marvin Jones at this point, just based on the upside. Yeah. DeAndre Swift, they're starting to give him the ball more. 13 carries to Peterson's 8, so that's good news. His floor is extremely reliable. I believe he's hit double digits in all but 2 games this year. DeAndre Swift, you just continue starting him no matter what. I feel like at this point, the other side of the ball. What's the other team we're talking about? Sorry, Washington. Sorry, lost track there. Alex Smith, man, it's not good. It's not good news that he's the quarterback. He's taken over. It's good news for J.D. McKissick. That's about it. He had 14 targets in 9 receptions for 65 yards. We talked about this the first time. Alex Smith, check down king, took over. This makes J.D. McKissick not just like a low-end flex, but a legit RB2.
Good note.
Legit RB2. And J.D. McKissick right now, he has, I believe, 6+ receptions in 4 straight games. I got to pull that up, but this past week he outsnapped Antonio Gibson 45-25. I don't know what's going on there.
That's ridiculous.
45-25. J.D. McKissick is an RB2 right now in PPR leagues.
Until
further notice.
We've talked about this. I don't get it. Antonio Gibson's better. Put him on the field. It's not like he can't catch everybody, for crying out loud.
Give those targets to Antonio Gibson.
Goodness
let him
gracious. It's poor coaching. Poor coaching, poor personnel decisions. Anyway, let me hit you with the line here. We got Washington plus 3.5 versus Detroit.
I'm gonna take Detroit against. I just don't think Alex Smith is ready to be out there right now.
Yeah, I don't like Detroit's defense, but I don't think Washington's offense is good enough to really take advantage of that. And Detroit's offense is good enough to take advantage of some of the things that Washington's given out. I'll take Detroit to cover there, even though I don't like that. I don't like 3.5 lines. I'd rather it be 3, but I think Detroit covers. Next game, this is a great one. Buffalo Bills versus the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona versus Miami, that was a lot of fun. We don't get... we do. So we'll talk about Tua in just a little bit. But Arizona, oh my gosh, Kyler Murray balled out yesterday. And I was looking at it because I was watching the game and I saw him trading touchdowns, but I had the Steelers-Cowboys game on just because that game was more interesting than I thought it would be. So I was kind of glancing over at the Miami game and looking over, and they were trading touchdowns. At the end of the game, I'm kind of looking back and reconciling the stats. I'm like, what in the world happened here? Because Arizona probably should have won that game. I saw the turnover on down. Basically, Arizona, they just gave up some opportunities. They really probably should have won that game, in my opinion, but they didn't. And that's what matters in terms of your record. Just didn't win the game. But, man, Arizona, I think they're going to give Buffalo some problems because Buffalo... and Buffalo, great win against Seattle, handled Seattle. And Seattle, I knew Seattle was in trouble when Chris Carson couldn't go out. Once they couldn't really run with that physicality that Chris Carson brings, I think that's how you beat Buffalo. But I think Arizona, even though they don't have that physicality, they're going to be able to run the draws up the middle there. So I'm really intrigued by just the X's and O's behind this game. But let me hit you with fantasy stuff. Josh Allen's a start. Zach Moss is my start at running back now, Buffalo. You called that a couple weeks ago, David. Very good. Stephon Diggs, I love him this week. I like Cole Beasley this week. Not John Brown, not Gabriel Davis, but Cole Beasley as well. Stephon Diggs, staying away from everybody else. Arizona, Kyler Murray, how could you not start him? He's playing incredible. You start Chase Edmonds this week. We'll see what goes on with Drake's status as we move on. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, gets back in the end zone. Yes, I respect Buffalo's ability to cover up the sidelines and everything, but I do think DeAndre gets back in. Christian Kirk at this point might be a weekly start. Everybody have been talking about him as well in recent weeks. He's just getting into the end zone since he's been back off the injured list, and then I stay away from everybody else. Take it away, David.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole ton to cover. You hit on most of it. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins had a down game. You don't really worry too much about that. Chase Edmonds didn't look so great in that lead back role. There's a bit unfortunate to see, especially as a Chase Edmonds. If you have him on your roster, you're kind of hoping he's going to take this gig and run with it. It's looking like when Kenyon Drake returns, it's probably going to go back to being that split committee. So if you can sell high on Edmonds to someone who's desperate for a running back, you don't need him as much. It's something to consider, that's for sure. Kyler Murray, holy moly, right? You said, I mean,
what a game.
It's the rushing. He has 60-plus rushing yards in 6 out of 8 games. He's only got less than 60 rushing yards in 2 games, 29 against Detroit and 31 against the Jets. So 29 and 31 are his 2 lows. He's got a rushing touchdown in 7 out of 8 games. So obviously, at a certain point, that's going to regress back towards the mean.
Sure.
But he can pass the ball. It's not the same concern with Lamar Jackson that we had last year to me, because you just see Kyler Murray. Look at the touchdowns he's passing: 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. His past weeks, he's passing the ball for 300 plus yards in the upper 280s. So he can do it all right now. I mean, the schedule down the stretch is not exactly brutal. We have Buffalo this week, then Seattle, New England, which will be we'll see how he does. Then the Rams, the Giants, the Eagles, and then finishes the fantasy playoffs against the Niners. So absolutely, Kyler Murray, you don't trade him for anything. I mean, you don't swap him for any quarterback. You don't overthink the rushing touchdown regression. I mean, just ride him while he's hot.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the guy. Like, if it weren't for, I've been saying, like, Russell Wilson's my MVP, but we'll see how the last half of the season goes, because Kyler Murray's got to start getting in this conversation if he's not already with people. He's really doing some special things. And Josh Allen, if he can play every week, he started the first 4 weeks of the season on fire, played incredible. I wasn't sure if we were going to get the bounce back game against Seattle or not. He definitely like 415 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 1 on the ground too. If he can close out the season like that, he's got to be in the MVP discussion. 2 really good teams playing. I think another week we're going to get a lot of points in this game. I do think that Arizona can run the ball more effectively than what Seattle was able to do last week with DJ Dallas and Homer. So let me get you with the line here. Buffalo on the road plus 1.5 versus the Cardinals. Who do you got?
That's a tough game. I definitely don't want to pick this one either.
Right.
Buffalo, I feel like I've been like chasing last week's game every time I've picked them this year. So I'm going to just pick Arizona, because I feel like Buffalo is just kind of likes to break our heart a little bit. Every time we buy in, they let us down.
I picked Seattle last week against Buffalo. I'm actually going to pick Arizona this week against Buffalo. And again, I say this, and Bills fans are probably getting sick of me saying this, because I really do respect the team, but I think Arizona actually, although I still think, and yes, I know the Cardinals beat the Seahawks, I still think Arizona, when we get to the playoffs and Seattle, has Carson, I think Seattle might be the better team there in terms of making the run. But that's not to say Arizona is not the team of this division. It really depends on really what this team can do under pressure and in pressure situations. This is a big bounce back game for them coming off a loss. I want to see what the team does. I believe in Arizona and Kyler Murray. They should have won that game last week, I think, against a very good and underrated Miami team. Good for Arizona, good for Buffalo. I can't wait to watch. I'm not picking it in my bets, but I'll take Arizona with you. Next game on the list, we got the Denver Broncos versus Las Vegas Raiders. Denver, I think they only play in the fourth quarter, so maybe we should set the line for the first 3 quarters of the game. Drew Lock is really good coming from behind, but didn't get it done quite last week. The Raiders, I just love their offensive philosophy. They're giving up too many points. Everybody knows it. So we should get some points in this game. And I like Denver's defense more than I like the Raiders' defense, but I also like the Raiders' offense more than the Denver offense. So going to be a fun game to watch. Game is in Vegas. I'm going to sit Drew Lock in terms of fantasy. I would start Gordon this week, although Phillip Lindsay should be back and healthy and all that. I tend to actually like Phillip Lindsay more than Gordon when they're both in the lineup. Let's see, Judy, Patrick. These guys should get points, but my real thing is what's going to go on at tight end there. I know Fant left the game again. Is he going to be healthy? Is he not, David? You can clean that up for me when we swing it over to you. I start Denver tight end there for sure. Vegas, I'm going to sit Derek Carr this week. I'm going to start Josh Jacobs. I'm staying away from the receivers, but I am starting Waller. Take it away, David.
Yeah, I didn't know about Noah Fant, so I can't provide any clarification there. Derek Carr, I was really hoping this past week against the Chargers. I wrote off that Browns game, the wind tunnel game, whatever. Yeah, right. He's going to bounce back. Only 23 attempts against the Chargers, a team that's been susceptible against the pass. So I'm cooling on Derek Carr. It's just they're not passing the ball enough. They don't have the weapons enough beyond Darren Waller. Henry Ruggs is just like a glorified decoy at this point. He's not even touching the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the potential there. It is interesting. Like, I thought he was, of all the rookie receivers, he was my favorite in terms of his landing spot and all that. And there were a lot of good receivers. He was the one I was looking most forward to, but it's not – I was expecting him just to be not like Randy Moss in the Vikings his rookie year or anything like that, but I thought they were going to be taking deep shot after deep shot to this guy. And you're right, it's almost as if he's more decoy at this point than he is deep threat. But the potential's still there, though. So it's like it's hard for me to like move away from it mentally because you see the potential on the field. So I don't know.
Yeah, he's definitely the Deshaun Jackson type where you're getting a long touchdown or you're getting absolutely nothing. And you just got to keep betting on nothing with Derek Carr. He's not inclined to throw the deep ball. He wants to keep checking it down to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. And Josh Jacobs, man, now they're giving Devontae Booker carries. Like, they're not getting him involved as a receiver. Josh Jacobs, man, I mean, this is concerning. Like, why? Why are they not involving Josh Jacobs? Like, is it health related? It can't be skill related. He's got the skills. It raises question marks. What is going on in Las Vegas?
Devontae Booker has been the bane of my existence for about 6 years in fantasy football. I cannot it's like Phillip Lindsay. He was taking snaps away from Phillip Lindsay in Denver. I love Phillip Lindsay. I mean, you see him every time he's on the field. He's making an impact. And Devontae Booker's always getting in there. Now he's doing it with the Raiders. It drives me crazy.
But for the Broncos, Locke is another great stream. If you streamed him last week, you were regretting it through 3 quarters, but in the fourth quarter he came through, and he ended up as one of the top point scorers of the week at quarterback. Now he gets the Raiders, who have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on a points per game basis. So hopefully it turns into a bit of a shootout. Said that last week with the Raiders and the Chargers, and it did a little bit, but not from a passing perspective for the Raiders. So hopefully the Raiders go ahead and Drew Lock has another big garbage time week for you.
Let me hit you with the line here. We got Denver plus 4.5 versus the Raiders. Who you got?
I'm going to take the Raiders at 4.5. Isn't crazy, and I don't think Denver's all that good.
Yeah, just based on Locke, like I think the Raiders will win, but I think the Broncos, man, I just think they're going to do what they've been doing the last few weeks and close the gap. So I think it's going to be a late Broncos cover, Raiders win. Interesting, though. Just an interesting game. We'll see what happens. Next game on the list, we got the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Miami Dolphins. This was kind of the reschedule. I think this is the last of the games that got shuffled around due to some of the COVID stuff earlier in the year. But anyway, we got Herbert. He got banged up, but he did come in and finish the game out. Good for him. The Chargers are scoring a lot of points, but now that they're scoring points, the defense isn't as stout as it once was. But that's kind of how it goes. Miami Dolphins, if you're a Dolphins fan, you got to be loving what's going on there. They scored another defensive touchdown against the Cardinals that basically won them the game, along with, I think, been able to force them off the field on downs. This Dolphins defense is for real. I'm not panicking that they gave up a lot of points. They were number 1, as you mentioned last week, in points per game. They gave up a lot to Arizona, but it's hard to stop Arizona and Kyler Murray. So that happens. Let's call that the outlier. This is going to be an interesting game. And Tua, you got to be enthused if you're a Dolphins fan, because we both kind of threw that first Tua Tagovailoa game out the window because the Rams defense is good, and Miami was housing the Rams so early in that game that they never really had to do anything. Well, he looked pretty good. Now he wasn't as good as Kyler Murray, but who is it this season? You can make the argument that Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray running away with the quarterback show. So either way, Tua looks good enough. I'm more and most concerned about the running game as I've been with Gaskin out on the IR now. They have kind of like a rotating guy. Jordan Howard gets in the end zone. He has another like 1.5 yards per carry day. It's a little weird. Let me hit you with fantasy stuff real quick. Herbert's a start. Let's see what goes on with the Chargers. Is it Keelan Ballage? Is Justin Jackson going to be there? Is it Joshua Kelly? I don't know. Start 2 running backs. Pick your running backs there. Just pay attention to the injury report, the depth chart. Keenan Allen's a start. I like actually Guyton more than I like Mike Williams this week, analytically speaking. I think Guyton.
I think Williams got dinged up again too, and I saw him in the end zone laying on the ground after a missed reception. So we'll see if he plays. I
missed that. I was watching the game, but I missed that. I didn't see that. And then I'm staying away from tight end this week against the Chargers, especially with I can't remember who's the other tight end that gets to the end zone all the time?
Parham?
Yeah.
Donald Parham?
Yeah, he gets all Henry's touchdowns, so I'm just staying away from him. Then you got Miami, dude. I am starting Tua this week. I'm staying away from running back personally. I'm just going to stay away. I don't like that backfield without Gaskin in there. Let's see. Wide receiver. I like Preston Williams with Tua a little bit more than I like Devontae Parker. Monitor that. Preston Williams looks like he's a little bit more trusted, especially in the red zone.
I think he got dinged up too. I gotta see, but there's a lot of dings where we.
It's impossible to keep track of, and I read before this thing, like all the injuries. It's like there's so many of them, they're not even being reported at this point. Anyway, so yeah, well, obviously if he's out, I switch back, go to Devontae Parker, and I think Gesicki is an interesting one this week. I'm not always high on him, but I think analytically speaking, he's projected to get in the end zone, so you could take a flyer on him in daily fantasy. Take it away, David.
I think Hunter Henry, you talked about Parham keeps stealing all his touchdowns. You're not wrong, but I feel like you got to keep starting him because Herbert is just playing so well. There's so much volume in that passing offense. Hunter Henry has to score eventually, right? Does he even have a touchdown on the year? Somebody double check that in the comments. But maybe one. Maybe he's got 1 or 2. Like he's due for some positive touchdown regression. So I like Hunter Henry. I think he's been involved on a weekly basis. The floor has been excellent. The ceiling just hasn't been touched yet.
Yeah.
And their schedule isn't awful going forward. So I like Hunter Henry, especially if you need a buy low. He's someone's backup. See if you can acquire him if you need tight end help. With the running backs, I mean, I'm impressed by what I saw out of Kalen Ballage.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to say that because he's become taboo a little bit over the past 2 years. Like, you couldn't
just like Kenyon Drake was when he played for the Dolphins, right?
You couldn't even speak Kalen Ballage's name without it like tainting your record, like forever. Like no, like don't even pick him up as like your 25th roster spot in Dynasty. People will never forgive you. But at this point, every week we talk about it. It's a different guy who's been freed from Adam Gase, who plays well when he gets away from Adam Gase. Kalen Ballage is just the latest on the list. 15 carries, 69 yards, a rushing touchdown, and it's the system. He also had 2 receptions for 15 yards. It's the system. We've seen running back after running back after running back after running back put up fantasy points. First there was Eckler. Josh Kelly had his big games. Then Justin Jackson took over. He had his big games. Jackson got dinged up. Kalen Ballage comes in. He's got a big game. So this team is producing fantasy points from the running back slot on a consistent week-to-week basis. And if they're willing to play Kalen Ballage over Joshua Kelly when Austin Eckler's out, how do we know they're not going to stick with Kalen Ballage over Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson when Austin Eckler returns? And we know with Austin Eckler, this is going to be a 2-back system. They're not going to run Austin Eckler into the ground as a rusher. So that presents an opportunity for Kalen Ballage. He's probably unowned in every Dynasty league. He's definitely unowned in every redraft league. So absolutely stash this guy. See what happens. If he continues to play ahead of Josh Kelly, if they don't turn back to Justin Jackson, Kalen Ballage is going to be a weekly flex play in this offense.
Absolutely.
And then the other side, while we're talking running backs, Salvon, I don't even know his first, Salvon.
I didn't even try. I ignored it.
He led the team in snaps. And Jordan Howard is a glorified goal line back. They like giving him carries on 3rd and 1 and on the 1 yard line. They don't really like giving him the ball outside of that. he was a healthy scratch before that.
Yep.
So if Savon, or however the heck you say it, Savon, whatever it may be, if he can play decent enough to leap over Jordan Howard in the pecking order, Matt Breida's got his injuries. Maybe he becomes the backup to Myles Gaskin, and maybe Myles Gaskin, he's already got his health injuries. Maybe he does come back. Maybe does the Christian McCaffrey, comes back for a week and goes out. So
yeah, right.
Stash Savon Ahmed, whatever his first name, Stash Ahmed. See what happens. I mean, these guys, Balaj, Ahmed, you got nothing to lose really stashing them, especially in a deep dynasty league. Let's find out what happens with these guys.
Let me hit you with the line here. We got the Chargers plus 2.5 versus Miami. Who you got?
Miami just keeps on winning. They just keep on winning, and the Chargers just keep finding a way to lose.
Yeah.
So I'm taking Miami.
I'm with you. I mean, I think the Chargers are almost due, but Miami's defense, look, I'm not looking at last week. It's impossible to stop Kyler Murray in that offense. It really is. So I'm not looking there, and Miami was able to score again on defense. They score on defensive touchdowns. Their defense is strong. I'm going to take Miami to cover the spread. I believe in them. I think Miami will get up to 6-3. I think they're 5-3 now. They'll get up to 6-3. They're up, guys. I mean, you gotta say that they're one of the favorites to get a wild card in the playoffs at this point. The way they're playing, it all hinges on Tua's shoulders, of course, and to see. And I do think Herbert plays better than Tua will this game, but Miami Dolphins defense will play better than the Los Angeles Chargers defense. Next game on the list, we got the San Francisco 49ers coming off the bye versus the New Orleans Saints. We know Garoppolo and Kittle would be out when we record.
Thursday night game they played this past week.
Oh, right? You're right.
Thursday
yeah, they
night.
just didn't play Sunday. Kind of brain fart there. Sorry about that. Yeah, so like when we recorded last week, we did not know that Kittle and Garoppolo were going to be out to the extent that they are. I think that got reported a little bit later on Monday, at least Kittle's. Or maybe, I don't know, one of the two. The Saints, Michael Thomas back. Suddenly they just blow the doors off of a team. I mean, the Saints just played great. They were up for that game. When the Saints are up for a game, they're really hard to beat. They haven't really been up for a game since, I think, week 1 when they played Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So are they going to be up for this one? I think they will, because they lost to the San Francisco 49ers last year. I think they'll be motivated. The 49ers, look, I think they're getting people back from the COVID list. I think, again, after we recorded, I think, they were already injured. They're already missing 10 of their best 15 players. They ended up losing another 6 of their starters, including Trent Williams it was just bad. San Francisco 49ers, I don't know what they did, but they pissed off the injury gods and the injury list gods. But anyway, let me get to the fantasy stuff. I'm staying away from quarterback. I have a good projection on Mullins, but I'm just going to stay away because I don't know. I know you like him a little bit more than I do, David. Running back, I guess McKinnon. I mean, let me say this. If I pick a San Francisco running back to pop, just pick the other San Francisco running back because I haven't gotten it right all damn year. One of them should score well enough. I'm staying away from receiver. I did see that Jordan Reed is back, so is it Dwelly? Is it Reed? Play one of those tight ends. For now, if I had to guess, and I'm wavering even as I say it, I'll take Jordan Reed. I have Dwelly on my roster, though. I don't know. David, I see him shaking his head. Let's see here. Breeze, I'm going to sit. I'm going to start Kamara. I'm going to start Michael Thomas. And then I sit everybody else. I think the 49ers defense plays well enough. It's the question marks their offense. Take it away, David.
Yeah, it's not Jordan Reed. I hate to break it to you. How many times do we got to do this Jordan Reed thing before we give up? How many times has it been?
Well, the problem is when he plays, he'll play a half, get 2 touchdowns, and then go out with a concussion. The question, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, is how quickly will he be concussed in the game? It's a shame.
He already had his 2 touchdown game this year. We got it out of him. He got it out of his system. It's back to being just useless. He's back to being useless again. Let's just agree on that until he stacks 2 games.
Yeah, there you go. That's fair.
Until Jordan Reed stacks 2 games, he's useless. I'm done factoring him into any equation. And I do think Ross Dwelly right now has earned it. He's earned the right to play over Jordan Reed just because he has more chemistry with Nick Mullins. He's been on the team longer, practicing with Nick Mullins, and he's produced at least fairly decently when he's been out there. And he hasn't been making mistakes. He can block, unlike Jordan Reed. So absolutely, if you're a George Kittle owner and you're trying to pick between Dwelly and Reed, it should be Ross Dwelly.
I don't have a strong argument against that.
But there's not really a whole lot else to cover. Like you said, the running game is just a complete guessing game right now. Is McKinnon the guy they actually want to lean on? Did they lean on him more because it was a short week and they couldn't prepare hasty, do what they needed to do? What happens when Mostert comes back? When it's just a bit of a headache right now. I'm still holding George Kittle in just hopes and prayers that he does what he does and just becomes an animal and fights back and plays hurt. So I wouldn't drop George Kittle yet. Wait till they get completely eliminated from the playoffs. We already talked about it early in the episode. There's nothing out there at tight end. You have nothing to lose. Just holding George Kittle and hoping for the best. If you got to release him in 2-3 weeks when they rule him out for the year, so be it. Just hold him for now. Hope for the best. On the other side, the Saints, thank God Michael Thomas is back. I'm so happy to have him back in my life again.
Yep.
I've got him in a few dynasty leagues. I've got him in a one redraft league. I traded for him because you know me, I don't draft wide receivers early.
Right.
5 for 51, that was good. Beyond him and Kamara, you can't trust anyone. Drew Brees is spreading the ball around way too much. Look at this. It's like 12 guys who caught a pass for him. 5 for Thomas, 1 for Deontay Harris, 3 for Troutman, 4 for Sanders, 2 for Cook, 1 for Taysom Hill, 2 for Josh Hill, 1 for Traquan Smith, 1 for Michael Burton, 2 for Callaway, 5 Kamara, 2 for Latavius.
How do you defend them? I mean, it's great if you're a Saints fan, maddening if you're trying to figure out their fantasy football stuff.
Yeah, it's Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and forget about it. That's about how you approach the Saints.
Agreed. Let me hit you with the line here. We got San Francisco +7 versus the Saints. Who you got?
You know, Nick Mullins, I wanted to see more from him. I didn't see it last Thursday. I'm absolutely taking the Saints here. I might go bet some money on this one like I did betting on Baltimore this past week.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. Let's see who's available for the 49ers. It always seems like they lose another five guys like after we record this. I had this as a Saints 6-point victory, late covered by 49ers kind of deal. I'm going to take the Saints, but I'm going to stay away from I'm going to stay away from this unless the 49ers get a bunch of people inactive at the last minute again, like we saw last week. Next game on the list here, big division matchup, NFC West. We got the the Seattle Seahawks versus the Los Angeles Rams. Look, Seattle coming off a loss to Buffalo, a pretty convincing loss in my opinion. Now, Russell Wilson, he's not going to have 4 turnovers. He's not going to have that kind of game again. The Rams defense, I like them. But their offense I like enough versus the Seattle Seahawks defense, man. I'm sick of waiting for this defense to really kind of ball out. They have talent. It's time secondary. It's time to put it together. I like the Seattle Seahawks run defense, but the Rams are good enough to pass on the Seahawks. Not every team is. The Rams are. So it's going to be interesting. I do think there will be points in this matchup. Let me get you with the fantasy football stuff here. Russell Wilson, obviously a start. We'll see what happens at running back. For me, at this point, if Hyde and or Carson are out, I'm not starting a single Seattle Seahawks running back. You might disagree with me, David. I'm not a believer in DJ Dallas. I'm not a believer in Travis Homer. But if one of those guys, Carson or Hyde, are able to play, I'd play either one of them. This week is a bounce-back week for me for Lockett. DK Metcalf at me is an auto start. He's too physical, man. I don't even care about the analytics. He's uncoverable. There's just a few guys in the league like that. Devontae Adams is another one. Just start him every week. Doesn't matter. Tight end for Seattle. No, I stay away. For the Rams, I start Goff against this Seattle Seahawks defense. I could probably sit especially with the kind of the rotation there with the Rams. I probably sit the running backs this week personally. I think Kupp, I think Woods are both starts, and I'm staying away from tight end this week, David, for the Rams. Take it away.
Man, I'll tell you what, if Cooper Kupp doesn't have a game against the Seattle Seahawks, I mean, you're already panicking if you own Cooper Kupp. He's just completely underwhelmed this year, and I was all over Cooper Kupp. Just because I was out on Tyler Higbee, I didn't believe Higbee was going to affect him.
Me too.
I don't know what is affecting him at this point. Maybe he's not as good as we think, and teams are starting to figure him out. And maybe he was too touchdown dependent, and we didn't factor in the touchdown regression. I don't know what it is, but Cooper Kupp has just underwhelmed completely this year. I don't think it's a bad idea after he hopefully has a huge game to explore offers.
Yeah, agreed.
The schedule's not terrible down the stretch, but they face New England week 14. You never know if New England's defense is going to show up and shut somebody down. The Jets week 15, we don't know if that's going to turn into a quick blowout where they're just running the whole second half. And again, they have Seattle week 16. So if you can get to that week 16 matchup and you held Kupp, great news. But I don't mind exploring maybe selling Cooper Kupp after a big game against Seattle because it just hasn't happened this year.
Agreed. Let me hit you with the line here, man. We got the Seattle Seahawks +1 versus the Los Angeles Rams. Who do you got?
That's a surprising spread to me. I mean, I think the Chris Carson injury is really, like you said, it's affecting this team. They've become one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, they just are not. They don't have the power and the ruggedness that Chris Carson offers as a runner. They can't get that 2-3 yards every play, no matter what's given to them. Like Chris Carson can just.
Yeah, Carson gets stuffed at the line by two guys, and he still falls forward for 1.5 yards. I mean, it's just rare. It just is. James Robinson's kind of like that for Jacksonville. That's why when people have you were way earlier on James Robinson than I was, so credit to you. But when my readers come in and ask me, they say, "Is he a flash in the pan?" I say, "No, not James Robinson. Like he's a different running back. He's always falling forward for an extra 2 or 3 yards. That's rare. Chris Carson is that way. That's why when people were like on Rashad Penny, I'm like, dude. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but there's just a physicality that coaches respond to and the teammates respond to, and it's the difference between 3.5 and 4.5 yards per carry.
Unfortunately, it's also the difference between staying healthy and getting hurt consistently every year.
Very fair point. Very fair point.
But yeah, this team does need Chris Carson back, but a 1-point spread, give me Seattle.
Yeah, I'll take Seattle. I mean, if Wilson didn't threw 2 picks, I think he fumbled twice, something like that. It was 4 turnovers. If he didn't do that, I mean, Seattle probably wins that game. It was a rough game. I give credit to Buffalo. I think Buffalo had a nice game plan against Seattle, but Buffalo's really good up the sidelines. The Rams, they have Jalen Ramsey. They're okay against – I think the Buffalo's strength basically is the sidelines, and they have weaknesses everywhere else, whereas I think the Rams' strength is almost like their defensive line. Seattle is more able to neutralize that. I think matchup-wise, Seattle will have a better time against the Rams, especially coming off a loss and being a little pissed. So I'll take the Seattle Seahawks as well. Next game, we got Sunday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens versus the New England Patriots. I can see by David's hat that he's not going to be biased about this pick at all. Let me get you with fantasy football projections here first. Lamar Jackson, I don't love this week. Well, analytically, I don't love this week against the Patriots, but I actually do like this matchup for Lamar Jackson, so I'm overriding the analytics, and I'm starting Lamar Jackson. I'll tell you why when we get to the spread. I'm staying away from the running backs here, and I'm actually staying away from the receivers here. I think Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle are probably the better players in this matchup. If you're going to start a running back, I like Dobbins more than anybody else. For the Patriots, Cam Newton, I do not like at all. I do not like the running backs. I do not like the wide receivers. I do not like the tight ends. Against Baltimore's defense, they're ready to go against the New England Patriots. It's going to have to be Cam Newton running the ball a lot, and I don't know that he's going to have success. It's going to be a weird game, honestly, to me. But anyway, take it away, David.
I love the New England recap there. I do not like Cam Newton. I do not like running backs. I do not like green eggs and ham. I will not eat them, Sam. I am.
I'm out. I'm out on New England for sure.
As you should be. This team has just. I mean, we'll see what they do tonight against the Jets. It's the Jets. Let's look at the bigger picture here. This offense is falling apart. This offense is just not looking good. They can't move the ball. Baltimore's a crazy good defense right now. I'll probably bet some more money on Baltimore again this week, depending what the spread is. But I do love the running backs, both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards this week. New England is known for their defense. They've been susceptible against the run.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. Only 6 teams have been worse than them. They're number 7th easiest fantasy matchup for running backs right now. Lions, Packers, Texans, Raiders, Panthers, Jaguars. That's the only teams that have been worse to running backs right now. Gus Edwards, he's got a touchdown in 3 straight games. He's getting enough carries. I expect him to get another goal line touchdown this week. They're giving him basically all of the goal line touches. Mm-hmm. I like J.K. Dobbins. It's a tough game against the Colts, but again, we talked about the Colts defense. They're legit. I was expecting a little bit more receiving usage from Dobbins, but still, I'm not going to worry too much. It's a good matchup against the Patriots. I'm starting him. Mark Andrews, he's due. I've been saying this every week, but he's due. Mm-hmm. You have to start him if you own him. You don't have another option. Hollywood, he's due too. God, these guys have been due for a while. It's not been a fun time owning Mark Andrews or Hollywood Brown in any. But I do think this is going to be Patriots defense, let's just make this clear. When they were great last year, they did nothing against Lamar Jackson when they played in primetime. Lamar Jackson lit them up. It's a little bit different this year. Teams are figuring it out, but I still don't have any faith. I think it's going to be a major blow-up game for a lot of these Ravens here.
You know, and I'll get you at the line in a second, but I mentioned Lamar Jackson at the top, and I look, the New England Patriots, you're right. I mean, I think their strength is in the passing offense. And so, you know, I think the New England Patriots give a team like maybe Buffalo, maybe Kansas City, maybe Pittsburgh, if they end up playing, a little bit more grief than they do, say, a Baltimore, who's not reliant on the passing game. Baltimore, if they get, and this is what I love about the Ravens, because I do criticize them. What I love about the Ravens is if they're getting the 3 yards per carry, like they were getting with their running backs against the, and it was less than that, it was like 2.5 and 2.1 yards per carry against the Colts, they'll stick with it. They'll stick with it, and that has an impact in the fourth quarter. Like you referenced, David, last year, the New England Patriots could not do anything against Lamar Jackson. Now, they'll try this week, but I do believe Mark Andrews is going to be opened up because I think the Patriots will have to do some more things to try to react to Lamar Jackson. I don't like this matchup at all for the Patriots defense. And let me be clear about this if you're a first-time watcher. I'm a buyer on the Patriots defense week after week. I do not like this matchup at all for New England. New England, to me, the path to victory here is to be able to run the ball and be able to run the ball with Cam Newton. I think it's both teams. It's basically who's going to be the better rusher at quarterback, and I think it's going to be Lamar Jackson.
Good luck running the ball on the Ravens.
Agreed. Now, if the New England Patriots had a Lamar Jackson, a guy that was so fast that you could stretch the field so that if they're trying to stop the run, they're still stretched. You know, you get 8 men. You can't have 8 men in the box with Lamar Jackson because he can get to the outside on you, you know. That is the difference in this game this week for me. But anyway, let me hit you with the line, David. We got Baltimore minus 6.5 versus the Patriots. Who do you got? Baltimore?
I'm putting some money on that one. 1 touchdown? Come on, guys. 1 touchdown. Cam Newton is not going to be able to keep them that close. It's not going to happen.
I agree. And Baltimore's so opportunistic defensively. Cam Newton hasn't been accurate this year. Cam Newton's got to make Baltimore pay down the field. I don't think he can do it against Baltimore's defense.
Who's he going to do it with?
I know. And I respect the Patriots and their ability to cover spreads and all that, but this is a different season. This is a different team with on-field leadership. I have Baltimore winning this game 20-9. So I don't have it as a massive blowout, but I have it as a safe cover for sure. Next game on the list, we got Monday Night Football, Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears. Vikings have been better since the bye week. The Chicago Bears cannot score at all. I love their defense, but they can't score, except for maybe like the last 2 minutes of the game to screw a cover. But anyway, Minnesota Vikings. Offensively, look, you start to Dalvin Cook. I do kind of like, analytically, I kind of like the wide receivers this week, but this is Chicago Bears, man. I don't think Cousins is going to have a great game. So I'm going to override the analytics. I'm going to stay away from the wide receivers for the Bengals, or for the Vikings. For the Chicago Bears, Nick Foles, because the projections are skewed because Minnesota's defense opened up the season very poorly. They're better now. They're playing better now. I'm staying away from every single Chicago Bear outside of maybe Allen Robinson. That's where I'm at, David. Take it away.
I don't blame you. I'm staying away, too. David Montgomery, guys, I get it with the matchups. Stop playing this guy, especially in DFS. Stop looking at the matchups because he just doesn't get it done no matter what the matchup is. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily all his fault. The offensive line is terrible. The quarterback play is not helping the situation, and the play calling is trash. So...
Look, man, at this point, I don't think they will because the ownership there is very, very patient. But at this point, you got to start thinking about firing Nagy. You got to. I mean, the defense is
that point.
This is a championship defense. Like this is, and it's not like they don't have weapons, David. It's not like they don't have weapons. You can't figure out an offensive line. Even a bad coaching staff can figure out how to plug some kind of offensive line together throughout the season. They can't get anything done.
And I think the thing that comes with it is Matt Nagy is supposed to be an offensive-minded
That's
coach.
it, yeah.
He is not supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. So when the defense is playing well and your head coach who is hired to be an offensive genius can't even get this offense to an average level, you absolutely have to think. There are just some guys who maybe they're just better as offensive coordinators than coaches. Maybe they're just better coaching under someone. Maybe he was never even a good coordinator. Maybe Andy Reid was the one who was good all along, and he was just riding Andy Reid's coattails. But
That's kind of how I feel.
They gotta start thinking about moving on from him, because it's just not clicking offensively for them.
Yeah, Chicago for me, the best next head coach to me. And I know everybody's talking about Bieniemy, but it's the same system, right? It's still the Andy Reid tree. So I don't say him. I would go with Arthur Smith, who I've been talking up for a while. Arthur Smith, if you're talking about the difference for this team, fixing the offensive line, committing to a run game, and I live in Chicago. That's the mark of the city. Run the ball, play defense. Arthur Smith would be a slam dunk hire for this organization. But I'm not convinced that they'll get rid of Nagy. They're very patient in ownership. We'll see, man. We'll see. Anyway, let me hit you with the line here. We got Minnesota -2.5 versus Chicago. That should say something. Minnesota on the road -2.5 versus Chicago.
Yeah, this is where Minnesota comes back to reality of being a not good team. I think Chicago has faced some better teams, and they've played decently. So Chicago's the winning team right now, and I don't trust Minnesota to perform, especially Kirk Cousins. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions this past week against Detroit. I don't expect Kirk Cousins to play against the Bears like he played against Detroit. And Dalvin Cook, 2 great games. He's due for a little bit of a dud. I think the Bears are probably going to handle Minnesota a little bit. At least defensively, they'll handle this offense.
I've been complimentary of Chicago all season. It's because of that defense. I was an early buyer. Even in the offseason, I was a buyer in Chicago's defense to bounce back. And I really do like this team quite a bit. And honestly, I would not even, talking about coaching changes, I would not even mind giving Pagano another run at being a head coach, getting rid of Nagy, get Pagano in as the head coach, and get a new offense and a new offensive system in there. That wouldn't bother me one bit. But in this game, I think Minnesota's playing better football. I don't think Kirk Cousins has a good game. I agree with that. But I think Dalvin Cook does enough. And Chicago's defense is really, really good, and they're going to be doing everything they can to stop him. I think he does enough with volume to cover this spread. So I'll take Minnesota. David, we did a pretty good job there getting through the podcast, and at least in terms of the games. But let's quickly run through.
Was that the last game?
That was the last game.
Oh wow! Look at us go. Huh?
Yeah, look at us go. We're getting better in terms of the time there, being a little bit more, consolidated with our discussion. But let's go through our fantasy football week 10 waiver wire targets, waiver wire pickups. Let's just give a couple of names here. I'll let you run with the first name at quarterback, David. Who you like?
It's Tua.
Yeah.
I wasn't giving up after one bad game, and I'm absolutely buying in now. After what we wanted to see was him utilize his legs, is for him to unleash that next level of fantasy upside. And what makes the difference between good fantasy quarterbacks and great fantasy quarterbacks? The ones who use their legs. 35 rushing yards, and some of those scrambles were beautiful. The last drive of the game where he evaded like 3-4 tackles and ran up the field. He's not scared to run. He can run. Those 35 yards might not seem a lot, but that's the equivalent to like an extra 85 passing yards. That's the difference between a 240-yard passing game and a 320-yard passing game. So it doesn't always look crazy, but it's gonna add up on the stat sheet.
I can't believe more people haven't picked him up yet. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it.
They saw one game and they just thought no upside. But guys, this is his first start ever. Come on.
Against a good defense, and they were winning. They didn't have to pass the ball. But anyway, I completely agree with that. Kyler Murray had the better game, but what really struck me is amazing as Kyler Murray was playing that game, Tua looked like he was holding up or keeping up with that. And when you're talking about Kyler Murray, he's on another planet right now. Tua, it's not like you saw Miami play and the quarterback played degraded. Like he's legit, everybody. Pick him up for crying out loud. He is my favorite pickup. Absolutely. I agree with you. I'll give you another name, Teddy Bridgewater, who we've talked about on this show. Now, Christian McCaffrey, he's better with them in there. But early in the season, Christian McCaffrey was getting a ton of rushing touchdowns before the injury. And it's just like, for crying out loud, Christian McCaffrey was getting the receptions. He just wasn't getting the screen pass touchdowns. Screen pass touchdowns count for quarterbacks, everybody. I know McCaffrey will be injured again, but Bridgewater, as we kind of close out the year, he's going to get these nice cheapy screen pass touchdowns. He had the little chest pass to Curtis Samuel, who we talked about in the Carolina Panthers segment as well. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter. I still think Tua is the star potential guy. But if you're looking for a glue guy to get you through some bye weeks or some injuries, I like Bridgewater. You got anybody else before we move to another segment?
I just think for 1 week, we mentioned it before, Drew Lock is another. He's a good stream for at least another week.
Yeah, and I would say moving forward, not this week against the Ravens, maybe Cam Newton. A lot of people have been starting to drop him. He'll still get you rushing yards. Not this week, but New England is seeing what we're seeing. They're going to have to run him some more, so he'll get you some rushing touchdowns. So that could have some value moving forward in the season. Running back, why don't you give me a name on the list you like?
It's Gus Edwards. I mean, he's still widely available, and just he's seeing volume. And I get it, Mark Ingram's coming back.
I think he took that job, man.
That's what I'm saying. I think so too. I don't think Mark Ingram did anything this year to deserve coming back to touches. Right now, he needs to stay on the sidelines. Let Gus the Bus do what he does. Let J.K. Dobbins continue to play. Touchdown in 3 straight games. He's getting the goal line carries. He finishes the fantasy season with Dallas, Cleveland, the Jaguars, and the Giants. He's a great stash. I mean, who cares if Mark Ingram comes back? Just stash him. He's got great matchups down the stretch.
Yep. I'll give you 2 1-week plays, or at least 1 week plays, depending on what happens. We talked about both of these guys. Mike Davis for the Panthers, it looks like McCaffrey be out again. Pick him back up. I know a lot of people have dropped him when McCaffrey came back. And Kalen Ballage for the Chargers, who we also talked about in that Chargers segment. Look, man, the Chargers, whoever they plug in there at running back and the primary guy gets in the end zone like every week, and it was Ballage this last week. We'll see what happens, monitor the injuries and everything, but those guys could be 1 week plug and plays. Anybody else for you?
I mean, there's actually a lot.
I know, me too. I have like 8 names written down.
Running backs this week. It's hard kind of figuring out a hierarchy for these guys. It's not a bad week to need a running back stash. Like we talked about Wayne Gallman. He's been getting it done. Cam Akers is available in a ridiculous amount of leagues. He's still got upside. At the very least, he's not touching the ball. He's got more upside than essentially anybody who's out there. Tony Pollard. We know Zeke's been dealing with the hamstring. If he misses a game, Pollard becomes a must-start. Duke Johnson. We'll see what P. Ryan does tonight. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there who you could pick up and stash this week.
Yeah, and I'll mention a couple other guys. Well, Damian Harris, to me, is more a longer-term play. Again, not against Baltimore. I don't like the matchup, but a longer-term play. I'll give you Dobbins. You mentioned Edwards. Dobbins is another one that's still available in a lot of leagues for unknown reasons. You mentioned J.D. McKissick with Alex Smith. He's getting crazy amount of targets. That's a season-long development with Kyle Allen being out. Smith is the starter there going forward. Phillip Lindsay, there's a lot of running backs that you could plug in and play. So that goes more towards your tight end argument. You can always find a running back, especially this year. You can't find a tight end.
Wait till we talk about the tight ends after we talk about the wideouts.
No,
You're
it's
not
a bunch of
going to be
crickets.
as thrilled with the options.
It's going to be 30 seconds of dead air. Let's move it on to wide receiver. Who you like at wide receiver is your favorite one this week?
I'm still prioritizing Jalen Reagor as my number one over guys like Curtis Samuel and Mecole Hardman, just because I believe in the talent. I believe that they need a second wide receiver to emerge. He's looked good. He scored a touchdown his first game back against Dallas, and just they have so many injuries. They need a second guy to step up. Curtis Samuel, he's still on a weekly basis. We don't know if he falls anywhere between 2nd to 5th in the pecking order. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult relying on Curtis Samuel. I like Jalen Reagor a lot as my number one wide receiver claim this week.
Yeah, I noticed him. We'll probably ignore him because he's owned it a little bit more. But if Corey Davis is still available in your league, you got to pick him up. When I checked this morning, he was still available in about 40% of leagues. That's way too much. Pick him up. Don't worry too much about what happened. They're playing the Chicago Bears defense, guys. Don't worry about that. He was kind of due for a little bit of a letdown. You mentioned Curtis Samuel already. I've mentioned in recent weeks, I still believe very much so in Christian Kirk, especially the way Kyler Murray's playing. Christian Kirk, people forgot about him. He was injured for a few weeks. He's been back. I think he's gotten a touchdown every week he's been back. But my favorite one of the week, we mentioned him early in the Thursday Night Football segment, Michael Pittman Jr. You mentioned Reagor. My argument would be the same for Michael Pittman. 2 kind of rookie running backs that came in with hype, missed some time with injury. Now they're back. Pittman, I think, will be leading this team in targets regardless of T.Y. Hilton's health moving forward.
Yeah. I don't have too many other crazy names. I mean, they're all kind of like deep stashes at that point. Like Tim Patrick, talk about Darnell Mooney's been producing well. Hunter Renfrow looks like the number one Raiders wide receiver again, which he was in the second half of the season last year. And we know he had a better second half of the season. So look at Hunter Renfrow to maybe build some steam with Derek Carr. Denzel Mims, we'll see what he does tonight against the Patriots. He's looked good in his first 2 games. Again tonight, Jacoby Myers, let's see what he does.
Yeah.
He's had 4 receptions each of the past 2 weeks. Gabriel Davis is a nice stash with how well that Buffalo offense is playing. And then Richie James Jr., I mean, he had 9 for like $180 this past week. So if you need a 1 week start, maybe consider Richie James Jr.
All right, David, and tight end. Who's your top one this week?
I don't even know what order to put these guys.
Yeah.
It's disgusting at tight end, to be frankly honest with you. This is why you get Travis Kelce with your first pick at the end of round 1. This is why, because you're either picking between Dalton Schultz, who surprisingly is still playing decently even with the backup quarterbacks. He led Dallas's receiver group in snaps. 69 snaps for Dalton Schultz, 68 for Gallup, 59 for Amari, only 38 for CD. So right now he's on the field basically 100% of the snaps. Also, Irv Smith, he's starting to gain some steam. I think he's probably I prioritize him over Dalton Schultz just because of the upside. But again, he's been completely hit or miss as well. It's all or nothing. He's got 3 games with double digits. The rest have been under 3 fantasy points.
Yeah, I like Irv Smith because he's trending up. Like I think actually what we talked about with the Vikings. I think he's trending up, so I like him. Schultz is an interesting one that you brought up because, seeing what Gilbert was able to do, the offense didn't look awful. So they were actually able to move the ball, so Schultz has value again. I like that. We mentioned the Dwelly versus Jordan Reed kind of debate. Pick your favorite one. David likes Dwelly. I like Reed, but it's hard for me to argue with David. I mean, Jordan Reed's injury history speaks for itself. I also like Austin Hooper, with coming back. I think he had his appendix out. I think he'll be back this week. We'll see. But if not him, obviously Harrison Bryant. I really like the matchup. But my favorite of the week is Dallas Goedert, still available in way too many leagues out there. I'll take Dallas Goedert to be a big factor in the Philadelphia passing game moving forward. Anybody else on your list, or did I cover them all?
I haven't even been including Goedert in my waiver claim because I feel like it should be so obvious. But you're right. He's still owned in less than 50% of leagues. Is like 40% owned right now in ESPN. It's unbelievable.
And everybody's hurting at tight end. He's the guy for me for sure.
Yeah, but I think he's obviously owned in the majority of competitive leagues. So you're picking kind of more. Trey Burton and Mo Alley Cox we talked about. Yeah. It's looking like Mo Alley Cox today. Maybe tomorrow it goes back to being Burton.
Yeah.
But just both of these guys right now, they're utilizing the tight end so much. You got to just kind of stash and hope one of them emerges. Maybe you obviously don't hope for injury, but that would be a pathway to one of these guys becoming like a weekly auto start. And then just a couple more names way down, like if you're really desperate. Logan Thomas, still playing 100% of the snaps. Not 99, 100% of the snaps. So he's out there. 3 for 28 is not sexy, but
Alex Smith will involve him as a safety valve quite a bit.
When he scores, he's going to have a decent fantasy week. So, 14-team leagues, maybe deeper leagues. If you're desperate, you need a bye week fill-in maybe for Travis Kelce this week. Go out, maybe consider Logan Thomas. Jacob Hollister is a guy who last year showed a little bit. He led the Seahawks in snaps this past week. So I'm keeping my eye on him as well, or the tight ends, I should say. He led the Seahawks tight ends in snaps over Greg Olsen, over Will Dissly. So keep an eye on Jacob Hollister if you're maybe in a 2 tight end league. Throw him on the bench, see what happens if he continues to lead that tight end group in Seattle.
Yeah, I like that one. I've always liked Hollister, so for him to out-snap those guys, that's a positive trend. Let's move into defense and special teams here. I'll start with my favorite one of the week. I bet you'll agree. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the New York Giants. Everybody dropped them off the bye week, but the Philadelphia Eagles are, at this point, I think they're like a top 7 defense, if I'm not mistaken. I know they're in the top 10, and they have a nice matchup against a team that has been struggling. So the Philadelphia Eagles are absolutely my slam dunk defensive special teams pickup of the week. How about you?
Yeah, I would say that as well. It was the Eagles, and that's the one thing that kind of I'm happy about because I talked about how I dropped Mike Davis and played JaMychal Hasty. The only reason I dropped Mike Davis, this was in the Pros with Joe's tournament league, and the defense scoring is so bad that if they have a bad matchup, they're going to go negative. So me and my teammate Derek, we've been stashing a defense for the next week, and we dropped Davis for the Philadelphia defense this past week because they were on the bye. So we'll be able to play them this week. That's the only thing that is keeping me from just smacking myself in the head for dropping Mike Davis.
Plus, remember, Philadelphia does close out much of the season, especially down the stretch, with NFC East opponents. So that's a good thing. I'll give you another couple that I like. I like Minnesota. I know Minnesota's defense has been struggling, but they're playing the Bears, and they're they are trending upward. Obviously, Philadelphia's way better a play this week, but if you miss out on Philly, I think Minnesota would be okay. Green Bay versus Jacksonville could be okay, but that one worries me. Houston versus Cleveland could be okay, but less so with Nick Chubb likely to be coming back. So those are the only ones I have. To me, it's Philadelphia or bust, really, in terms of fantasy
there's not
football.
a whole lot of great streaming options this week. A lot of the better matchups are already from highly owned defense, like you talked about the Ravens playing the New England. You don't have a chance picking them up.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think we can close out the show, man. Anything for the crowd before we head out, man?
No, except for maybe Kalen Ballage. Take him seriously. We talked about it before. Stash him. I know it's taboo just saying his name. It feels dirty having it come out of my mouth. But don't just write this guy off.
No.
This Chargers team is producing running back fantasy points week in and week out. If he takes the number 2 job behind Austin Eckler, he's going to have value.
Every week.
Chargers spot, stash him. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, everybody, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you again next week. Enjoy, everyone.